This video is sponsored by Squarespace. 10 races to go in the 2024 Formula 1 season, plenty of action still to come. Zandvoort this weekend, I'm buzzing for it. It's all up in the air. Who can win races, who can get pole positions? Well, I asked you lot to predict how the rest of this season will pan out. Who's going to bang, who's going to clang? My name's Tommo. Let's talk about it. Thank you for responding to the community post. If you did, make sure you subscribe to the Tommo YouTube channel to make sure you can get involved in the future. Thank you. Why are you reading my nickname, 8158? I'm reading it because you're in the video, mate. Leclerc becomes the most consistent driver on the grid, always in the top 5. Now, to be honest, Charles was well on the way to this. I mean, wasn't he like top 4 in the first like 7-8 races or something crazy, right? It kind of aligned with Ferrari struggling, but this is very much believable because Charles has it in him. Yes, of course, Charles got a crash in him. Don't get me wrong, okay? He's not perfect, no one is, but he is incredible. If Ferrari can give him and Carlos a consistent package that isn't going to be porpoising left, right and centre, which hopefully they've sorted in this mid-season break, and they're bringing something Zandvoort and onwards, which is going to help them unlock this consistency of performance that they've gone for with their car. Charles a guy to bring the points home for sure, absolutely. Next we have Jim the Rook 3722. Alpine legitimately starts to cook, in brackets, I'm delusional. Well, it depends what you define by cook. Does the engine catch fire and therefore be a good vessel for cooking? Perhaps. Do they actually start to deliver on track, I think is more what you're getting at here. Now, of course, Ollie Oakes is taking over as team principal. He's starting... Did he start today, actually? Either way, that's imminent. So, big changes going on at Alpine. Fundamentally, their chassis is not bad. I mean, they've got a power unit deficit, which is baked in. But I think chassis-wise, they're in a pretty good place. If they can shift some weight, they might be onto something good. Look, it's all relative. I would say that Alpine is one of those teams towards the bottom in that kind of behind Aston Martin pack, or even maybe include Aston Martin in that I am actually quietly confident about. I think Ollie Oakes is going to bring something good into the operation side of that team. I think he's got a lot to show, a lot to prove. Ocon's going to be slowly transitioned out of these meetings, as he should be, because of course he's going to Haas, and Pierre Gasly's going to have to stand up and take it on. I think Jack Doohan is going to be in that seat, and if he is, they need to be giving him every single FP1 session for the rest of the year instead of Esteban Ocon. Because Alpine don't have a lot to gain or lose this year. You know what, Jim? I'm kind of feeling this as well. I've got more confidence in Alpine, honestly, than I have Aston Martin for the rest of this year. There's a hot take for you. Next, we have the camping Dutchman. Max spent too much time in the simulator this break and has become one with the car like last year and wipes the floor with the competition once again. Now, of course, Max Verstappen has it in his locker. Okay, he's the best driver in F1, arguably already one of the best to ever do it. No doubt. But will he be able to get on top of this car and wipe the floor with the competition? Wipe the floor? I think that is a stretch, especially considering all the murmurings we've heard out of Red Bull. Of course, well, today as I'm recording, but earlier today I did my asymmetrical break here, and it seems that Red Bull were the most likely culprit and maybe had to take something off of their car. Update, motorsport.com just put out this article, what was really behind the FIA's asymmetric brake rule change. I'll leave a link to the full article in the description down below, but the long and the short of it is an FIA spokesman told motorsport.com there is no truth that any team was using such a system. The real motivation in changing the rules instead comes from efforts to tidy up the regulations for 2026 and make it clearer in the next rules era what was and what was not allowed, and following a request from teams to ensure that nobody tried to exploit the tiniest of grey areas before then, it was requested that the new clause be added to both the 24 and 25 regulations. FIA in the future, if you're going to make any changes to regulations, technical or sporting at all, just chuck out a little press release just explaining why. A little TLDR would be lovely. Struggling on the curbs is now getting kind of exposed to the world. To regain those levels that Max was achieving in that Red Bull in late 2022 and most of 2023. I don't think we'll ever see that again. Maybe even in the history of the sport. Not for a very, very long time anyway, of course. You know, maybe a regulation change will changed things up a bit, but it was such a big reg change going into 22. Red Bull nailed it so much and Ferrari really let themselves down. Could I see him opening his gap to Lando between now and the end of the season? I could. Wiping the floor with the competition, I think, is to overlook the steps that Mercedes, I didn't expect Mercedes to be anywhere this year, to be honest. They've very much surprised me. If any driver can deliver, and Max will win the Drivers' Championship, there is no doubt in my mind this year still. If anyone can drag performance out of that car, it is Max Verstappen. But to wipe the floor with the rest, I don't think so. You know what does wipe the floor with the rest though? Today's video sponsor, Squarespace. That's right, if you want to build your very own beautiful online home, whether you've got a blog, an online store, a portfolio like I've had on Squarespace for years, tommoclussy.co.uk, where I showcased all of my graphic design photography work from my past life and helped me broadcast myself to the world before YouTube. Well, thanks to Squarespace's brand new feature, Squarespace Blueprint, it is easier than ever. Drag and drop templates, fully customizable and brandable to your heart's content, and you can give it all a go completely free of charge. It's only when you want to publish your finished beautiful website to the world that you have to pay anything, and that time will come because it's great. And when it does, head to squarespace.com/TommoF1 to get 10% off of your very first website or domain. Next, we have Damas4425. Bortoleto wins Formula 2. I wanted to sneak in a little Formula 2 mention here, and thank you, Dan, for that one. Bortoleto wins F2. Now, right now, he is, hang on, let me check, 36 points behind Isaac Hadjar with 4 weekends constituting of 8 rounds to go. Absolutely doable. I've been banging the Bortoleto drum all season. You know, F3 champion last year, Gabriel Bortoleto, picked up by McLaren. This kid's quick, and if he goes and wins F2, he will have done what only a very select few, and Oscar Piastri, George Russell, Charles Leclerc have done, which is win back-to-back F3 and F2 championships. Now, if Bortoleto does that, I mean, he's in contention for the Sauber seat, apparently. Mattia Binotto is a bit of a fan, as he should be. Obviously, it would take something for Sauber to prize him away from McLaren, potentially, whereas Sauber already have Zane Maloney on their books, Tab Pourchaire as well. I think Bortoleto is absolute mustard, though. Don't get me wrong, phenomenal driver. I could absolutely see him winning it this year. He's the most likely next Brazilian to get back into F1. Sorry, Felipe Drugovich. I think that ship's sailed for you, unfortunately. But Bortoleto, him and Hulkenberg in Sauber next year could really cook. Ethan Pratt 330. Haas overtake Aston Martin for 6th in the Constructors' Championship. This is far-fetched, but Nico is doing the business and the car is genuinely looking pretty competitive. Ah, man. So the momentum is very much in Nico's side of the garage. Hulkenberg Haas right now, over a variety of tracks, is probably about there with Fernando Alonso in an Aston Martin. I think Fernando's really struggling in his Aston, which I think is a quicker car than the Haas. But I think Nico's getting closer to the optimum performance of that Haas than either Stroll or Alonso are, because the fact that Stroll has closed up relative to Fernando so much over recent weeks, to me is indicative not of Stroll significantly improving, it's more of Fernando falling back somewhat because the car's nowhere and because it's going to be hard for him to really, especially in this stage of his career, to really be motivated to drag performances out of this Aston Martin, where they're just hitting their heads against a brick wall in terms of upgrades, which is something that has been known for years. But now Gunter's out the door, Komatsu's come in and seemingly steadied that ship and very much turned it around. So I think to overtake him in the Constructors, a 46-point gap with 10 races to go between Aston Martin and Haas, that's going to have to take some crazy shenanigans, chaotic race where everyone falls off and Hulkenberg finally gets the podium, right? That's what it's going to take to get that done. The Dutch Star Wars guy says Nico Hulkenberg is finally going to get a podium. Are you two working together here? Look, him going to Sauber, honestly, it feels like this current Haas, as it is right now, could be his best chance at getting a podium for a much longer time, because Sauber are nowhere. He's going to be in the Sauber next year. Who knows about Audi, right? That's so difficult to call. He's in a car right now in a Haas where more often than not he's getting it into Q3. You know what? I really hope he gets this podium, because it does my head in when I see people who claim to be educated Formula 1 fans, right, be like, oh, he's not that good because he's never got a podium. Like, are you trying to like not actually understand the sport and actually just say things? It's just such a silly thing to say. Delve a little bit deeper and actually try to understand things beyond the surface level. Because if that's, fine, if that's how you want to look at the sport, fine. But then don't try and engage in genuine discussion. Because Nico Hulkenberg, by every measure, is a fantastic Formula 1 driver and proves it time and time again. And just because, he finished fourth and then someone retires up front and then he inherits a podium, that makes him so much more deserving as being a quality F1 driver. Get out of here. Alex Potter, 998. Oscar Piastri overtakes Lando Norris in the driver's standings to claim second place. Ooh, thank you, Alex, for the thumbnail. Much appreciated. So, right now, there are 32 points behind Lando and Oscar. I actually thought it was more than that. I can't believe it's only 32 points between them with 10 races to go. And again, when you're at the front, it's 25 for a win, 18 for P2, 15 for P3, etc, etc. Like, way more ability to score points. This could absolutely happen. You look at the qualifying head-to-head, and it is very much in Lando's favour, but those average gaps have been very, very small. Like, I believe it's within a tenth between the two of them in representative conditions. You look at Oscar's race management, how composed he is. I still think he's got a little bit to work on. Absolutely, for 2025, if I had to put money on it, I would put money on Piastri finishing ahead of Norris in 25. I just would. But for the rest of this year, in terms of converting to points, this absolutely could happen. I mean, first of all, it just takes one technical DNF, one failure on one side of the garage to massively sway it one way or the other. But also, Lando's in a position now where he's getting a lot of heat. I think a degree of heat is understandable, right? Because there have been many an opportunity squandered. I also think that it's become now quite popular for people to like dogpile on Lando because he's got a big fan base and because he wears his heart on his sleeve and he's very open and honest, which we ask drivers to be this way, and then they are this way, and then people just go like use it as they've seen a weakness. And Lando taking such accountability for his performances, people see that and then they're it's pathetic. However, that doesn't mean that we as fans cannot be critical of his performances. Of course we can. People always find a way to take it too far, and I think that there isn't only one way of doing it. He doesn't have to be an absolute knobhead to achieve success, but there's something missing there with Lando. He's not Oscar. He's not this calm, relaxed character, and you can't ask him to be because he's a human being, and every human being is wired differently. But I just do think overall, from a mentality standpoint, I have more confidence in Oscar Piastri going forward, the athlete, than I do Lando Norris. I think Lando will finish with more points than Oscar, but I think it will be close. Gel van der Velde, 704. Max gets the championship without winning any more races. 0 out of 10 for Max for the remainder. Still wins the championship. I mean, again, he doesn't need to. He can finish second in every race and Lando win every race and still win it. Discounting sprints, because sprints are always there to ruin the stats, aren't they? Max's consistency will get the championship over the line, even if the Red Bull starts really honking and really struggling. He will still get the job done. There is zero doubt in my mind that Max Verstappen already has that 2024 F1 World Championship. Do I think he won't win a single race for the rest of this year? No, he will definitely win races, multiple races between now and the end of the season, no doubt. Like, it's all relative, isn't it? Red Bull are relatively struggling and again being exposed for problems that I think they've always had with their car, but it's not a bad car. Let's not go that far, okay? It's still one of the best cars in F1, and he is still the best driver in F1. So he will win races and the championship. So those are some specific predictions, but what about more general overarching ones? Well, I'll put 6 categories together. Most wins, most poles, banger driver, clanger driver, banger team, clanger team, okay? So I asked you lot to vote. 3,276 of you obliged, so thank you very much. But we're going to start with mine and then alternate as we go. Starting with most wins. Now, hear me out. Even though I said earlier, I think Lando Norris will probably finish ahead of Oscar Piastri in the points. Points can come in many shapes and sizes. You can win and get 25. You can finish P11 and get 0. You can finish P8 and get 4 4. But my prediction for the most wins between now, Zandvoort, and the end of the season in Abu Dhabi, I'm going with Oscar Piastri. I think he's already shown he absolutely can handle being up there. He can get a better start than Lando. He can put the move on Lando like he did in Hungary. He's in what is probably the best car right now overall. Who knows when we get to Zandvoort with the upgrades that other teams are bringing, but it feels like McLaren are in the strongest place. He can match Lando over a lap. Since Silverstone last year, all he's known in a McLaren is a competitive car. Lando's had a dire McLaren at points over the years. I think Oscar will win 3 races between now and the end of the year. That's my prediction. Lock it in for what it's worth. Oscar does have a trough in him. He has a mistake in him, and I reckon he'll have more troughs than Lando between now and the end of the year. But again, Lando's already carrying a points advantage over Oscar, so I still think Lando will finish ahead in points, but I think Oscar might get more wins than Lando. As for you, well, 59% went Max Verstappen most wins, 14% Lewis Hamilton, 12% Lando Norris, 9% Oscar Piastri. So yeah, most of you think Max is going to continue to get the job done most of the time, but again, it just massively does depend on how much this Red Bull potentially gets nerfed between now and the end of the season. You can't doubt Max's ability. It's just, are they going to be able to give him a package that he can actually, go to fight with? 14% Hamilton. I did think about Lewis. Mercedes are onto a good thing, good trajectory at the moment, and he feels a bit more invigorated by that car underneath him right now. It was honestly, actually, for me, it was a toss-up between Hamilton and Piastri. Time will tell. The fact that it's so hard to call is great. Next, most pole positions, and for me, I've gone with Max. I actually still think Max will get the job done over a lap. I think he'll find a way. He's phenomenal over a lap, and as much as I think maybe Charles, you could definitely argue Charles quicker than Max over a lap. However, I think the Red Bull is still the more capable car, the more capable overall package. Race pace wise, I feel like McLaren and Mercedes, but particularly McLaren, really do have a, not significant, but a sizable advantage that will pay dividends over the course of a race distance. And as McLaren get more used to being up there and making decisions that aren't as reactive as they have been, I reckon Max will get plenty of poles, but I don't think he'll convert most of them. As for you, 39% of you went Lando Norris most poles, 37% Max Verstappen. So very close between the two of them, to be fair. 8% Charles Leclerc, 8% George Russell. You cannot forget George Russell's prowess over a lap, no question. If Mercedes continue to move forward, and obviously again Lewis is leaving, so you would expect George to be privy to information and potential preference, as they should, right? Because any driver's leaving, you can't give them preferential treatment just because of loyalty. Loyalty is dead, right? If you want to achieve something in the sport, you got to be cutthroat. Russell could do bits, so I'm glad he's got a shout out there. Just as the pressure heats up a bit, Max has been at this rodeo for a long time, but I can absolutely see why Lando Norris won this vote for poles, for sure. Now for banger driver, who is going to impress the most relatively to their team. So it's not just who wins the most races, whether you're in a Sauber, whether you're in a Red Bull, who's going to really stand out and come to the fore. Well, for me, I'm going Pierre Gasly. I think Alpine are actually going to have a pretty decent second half of this season. I think Pierre's going to really spearhead that. I think he's got to make the most of it. It's not the ideal position, but pushing that team in a direction that works for him and not having to worry about Esteban anymore, I think Pierre could really lead Alpine to something special. And I think this is going to be a great time for him to really, stick his flag in the dirt and be like, this is my swamp. And when Jack Doohan probably comes in and joins, like, you're going to be number 2, lad. You follow my leads, right? This is a great opportunity for Pierre to deliver the kind of levels, not necessarily that the car will allow him to, but the kind of levels of performance he was able to in 2021, because that was an incredible season for him. As for you, 39% of the vote, once again, you went Oscar Piastri. There's a lot of Oscar love out of you lot, right? Whenever I do my live stream, Oscar's always getting big numbers in these polls. A lot of you rate him very highly. You know I do as well, right? There's no smoke without fire. This kid's absolute gravy, don't get me wrong. But 18% Lewis Hamilton, 8% Lando Norris, 6% Max Verstappen. So you've gone for drivers within that top group of teams, which is fine. Yeah, you're entitled to. And I think Hamilton's momentum is very good right now. Since he got that win in Silverstone, it's been off the charts. But yeah, I think Oscar, I'm backing him having a banger. Hence why I said I think he'll get the most wins between now and the end of the year. Maybe that's a stretch, but again, like I always say, the chance of nothing unlikely happening is in itself unlikely. What about clanger driver? Who's going to stink up the place for the last 10 races of this year? I've gone Checo. I'm sorry. One thing that made me doubt putting Checo is that I do think Red Bull, they're going to do whatever they can to get Checo performing enough to get enough points to get Red Bull over the line in the constructors, potentially ahead of McLaren. They can't worry about, oh, how's he going to do in the car next year? He cannot be in a Red Bull next year. That cannot happen. They just need to get the constructors title. And if it's going back to an old spec car, which has been spoken about and I think would be a smart move, that he could be more confident in, right? It's all well and good having a quicker car, but if you can only get to 90% in that quicker car, but you can get to 95, 96% in a slightly slower car, you go with the slower car just to get him across the line. I know it's not ideal, but you do what you got to do. He also has Monza, he has Baku, Singapore, tracks that he has performed well in a Red Bull specifically before. There's so much pressure in this situation. There's so much expectation. There's so many questions. I'm sick of it because it just keeps happening and nothing's changing. Read an article, I don't know if it's true, I'll put it in the edit, about Hugh Bird going on paternity leave. Kids come through clutch just in time to maybe get someone else in to help out Checo. But then when Alex was in the Red Bull, they brought Simon Rennie back to race engineer Alex, and it didn't seem to massively change things. So who knows? But they're going to try everything they can to make it work because of how valuable Checo is to Red Bull. But yeah, I'm not seeing a big turnaround. And neither are you lot either. 45% of the vote for Checo. Not even close to P2 in this one. 12% Zhou Guanyu, 7% Lando Norris, which is interesting. 7% Logan Sargent. I think Sargent obviously knows he's going, so he can race with no fear, perhaps, which actually I think Logan will do all right between now and the end of the year. Norris, look, Lando's put himself in these positions, and yes, he has been known to bottle, but would you prefer him not get to those positions in the first place? Like, come on, but he does need to sort out starts. And then Zhou Guanyu, yeah, I mean, I've been really disappointed with Zhou. I think that maybe an old spec could work out, but he really needs to like do something. Like, relative to Valtteri, he needs to be close for these next 10 races to end his F1 career with any good sentiment, I guess, amongst the fan base and amongst potential candidates if he does want to try and get back into the sport, because it doesn't look like his options are there for 2025. Banger team, I've gone with Williams, the W's. Now, there's been a lot of talk about this upgrade coming in Zandvoort after the summer break. Big weight loss for Williams, which was part of James Vowles trying to sell the project to Carlos Sainz, being like, this is where our performance is and this is how overweight we are. If we can get that weight down, which we will with time, this is where our performance would be relative to the field. To try and make Williams' bad season as it is going look not so bad. I'm looking at that and being like, you know what, actually, yeah, I think relative to where they have been, I think they are going to take a significant step forward. Logan driving with a bit less fear, perhaps, and Alex doing, I think, a pretty good job all in all. The excitement with Carlos Sainz coming in next year, I think the motivation for the team is going to be higher. I'm feeling good about Williams, even though, you know, Vowles has said numerous times that not that interested in 24 and 25, it's all about 26, but even so, it's Williams's current position that Carlos has had to look at and has made the judgment call to choose them over Sauber, over a works Audi deal. But you lot are feeling better about Mercedes. 44% of the vote, 41% McLaren, so pretty close between them two. I've been really pleasantly surprised with Mercedes turnaround. Imagine if they'd dropped the zero pod concept. I know there's a lot more to it than that. It's the floor and all that, right? But fundamentally, that aggressive left field choice they made on the aero, if they'd have aligned with the consensus earlier on, then they've been in a really good position, right? Considering how late they were to this fundamental philosophy, they've got on top of it pronto and they're quicker than Ferrari right now. To say that at the start of the season would be crazy. So credit where credit is due to Mercedes. Mercedes know how to win. You know, it wasn't that long ago that they were winning left, right and centre. So I do believe more in Mercedes operationally to deliver in terms of those high composure requirement moments when you're potentially winning a race. The momentum moving forward, I think, puts Mercedes in a really strong position for 25, and I think Lewis driving with confidence, George wanting to stake his claim at that team, because I've said this before, if Toto was all in on George, why would he be flirting with Max so much? And also only giving Lewis a 1+1, keeping the door open to Antonelli coming in. So George has got something to prove to Toto here, because that's not a done deal, I don't think, by any stretch. And then finally, Clanger team, for me, I have very, very little to get excited about for Aston Martin, at least between now and the end of the year. They're really just in that uncanny valley in the middle of nowhere, and I absolutely see Alpine, I see Racing Bulls, and I see Williams and Haas. The only team I don't see being competitive against the Aston Martins between now and the end of the year is Sauber. All the others I could see taking points consistently off of the Aston Martin drivers. It's getting quite full stallny with this team already. I know there's a long way to go and they're still waiting on facilities and blah blah blah, right, and the Honda engine deal from 2026, but it feels like a really frustrating time for Aston Martin, and it's come at a bad time because it feels like there is potentially a window to lure Max Verstappen over. Their performances on track and not giving Max and his camp the belief, surely, that they need to be like, you know what, we're going to gamble on a Lawrence Stroll Aston Martin. And you guys, 40% of the vote, as always, have gone Sauber. Oh, it stinks, doesn't it? Not much to say. Just a slow car, haven't delivered the consistency of upgrades and performance that Bottas and Joe have needed to really showcase their abilities. I think Bottas has done the better job in a difficult car. His experience has really helped kind of pay dividends in this moment, and I think Bottas absolutely deserves to stay on the grid. Bottas and Hulkenberg on paper, anyway, is exactly what a struggling team needs. Two drivers with crazy levels of experience between the two of them who can really build that team forward. Is going for a junior like a Bortoletto or even like a Liam Lawson really the best thing for them? I'm not so sure. So there we have it. All predictions done. Let's lock in Zandvoort this weekend. I can't wait. Live stream, pre-race Chinwag for the 2024 Dutch Grand Prix will be coming out tomorrow. I'm trying to get this out on Tuesday, so on Wednesday. Don't forget to drop a like on this video. Subscribe if you're new and you want to see more. My name's Tomo. Thanks again. Have a good one. Ta-da.